In this video, I'm going to teach you how to play one of probably the most desirable golf shots there is. It's the 20 to 30 yard little pitch onto the green that's loaded with spin, takes a couple of bounces and pulls up hopefully by the hole. We're going to go through three really key things that you need to focus on in your technique in order to execute that shot. So the first thing we need to look at is the club and the loft. Now, when we're looking at spin, and obviously we're really trying to put as much spin as we can onto this golf ball, spin comes from friction. Friction between the club and the ball. The more friction we can create, the more spin that we should be able to generate. So as we look at the loft on the club, if we had a club with zero loft, we're not going to be able to generate much spin at all. And as that loft increases, the spin increases. So we know that a pitching wedge spins more than a driver. So as we start to increase the loft, the spin increases. But there's a point where we can have too much loft, and what actually happens is the ball ends up skidding, sliding up the club, and we get super high launch, but we don't actually get that much spin. So there's an optimum angle of the club, and it's generally depending on lots of things like the golf ball that you use and the way you deliver the club. But for this shot, I've got my 60-degree wedge. But I'm actually going to crank it open a little bit more. I'm going to start to go, a little bit, not low, as you can see, that's maybe 4 or 5 degrees. So I've increased that loft a little bit. And then when I set up to this golf ball, I'm going to, as best I can, get the club shaft nice and vertical because I want to know the loft that I'm using. I know I've got 60, I know I've opened it a little bit. I know I've got the club shaft neutral. I may be looking at 65 degrees of loft in that region. I reckon for me that's about right, provided I use the right golf ball, sticky golf ball, soft cover. I use the TP5, it's great for this. It's going to grab, it's going to stick on the club face. But you in practice can play around with this. What you'll find is if you start to open the face, you should start to see more spin. But you'll get to a point where you open the face that much that the ball suddenly starts to just pop up and it looks more like a lob shot than a low spinning wedge. So play around with it, but I think 60 degree or the most loft that you've got and then opening the face is a great way to do that. Now you can see the flag out there. I'm going to try and play a cut shot, a fade shot, which means that I'm going to be basically swinging my club left of that flag. Now there's a reason why I do that. Number one, it generally gives me a slightly steeper approach to the ball, a little bit more down. The reason that's beneficial is because for us to spin it as much as we can, we need nothing between the club and the ball. No grass, no moisture, no mud in your grooves, no dirt on the ball, nothing. The cleaner the contact, the more spin. So if I have a very shallow approach, I'm more likely to get grass, moisture between the two, and the spin rate drops. So when I play it with a slightly cutting motion, it gives me a slightly more descending blow, and it tends to mean that I have less debris between the club and the ball. Therefore, I'm increasing the likelihood of that high spin rate. It also means, for me, that I'm able to strike the ball slightly lower in the face. The lower in the face you hit it, the higher the spin, or higher the friction. You start to move up to the middle or the top of the club, the friction gets reduced. So playing it as a slightly cutting motion is really going to help me. So I'm going to kind of set myself up, as you can see, to the left, and I'm going to work the club more this way and more across. The other thing that does is because it's a glancing blow, it doesn't put as much energy into the ball, which means that I personally can use a lot more speed. Spin comes from high friction and high speed. If you can get those two things, you're going to be spinning it. And the final thing is what we do in terms of our release. So I'm going to set up. I'm going to be using a little bit of load on the way back, so you can see that I'm using my wrists. This is really important. And on the way through, I want to be unloading those wrists to return the club to neutral, and then having the club overtake my hands quickly on the way through. How we load the wrist is really important. We need that club head overtaking the hands through impact at a pretty high rate. Many golfers, when they pitch and chip, have the wrists working in transition. So what they will do is they will move the club back with very little wrist set, and then in transition they create this lagging motion. For a high spinning pitch, that's terrible because it's really hard to get rid of that through impact. So you end up having shaft lean, which de-lofts the club, and it brings the spin loft down, and we start to hit these balls low with no spin. So what I want you to try and feel is, with your right wrist, you're working the club up pretty quickly in the backswing, and then you're unloading that club aggressively on the way through. And if we do that, you should see how the grip ends up pretty close to my thigh. It's not working out this way. So those are the three things that I would look to include to hit that shot. Now you can have those three things. You can be the best golfer on the planet at those three things. You will not spin it in certain conditions. If you have got dirty golf clubs, you will not spin it. If you use a golf ball which is really hard, like a range ball or a golf ball which is designed for distance, it's a hard cover. It reduces friction, you get that sliding action and the ball pops up. And this is my excuse for the shot that I'm about to hit, long grass and moisture. I don't have long grass here, but I have lots of moisture. You can see that there's loads of moisture in the grass. It's pretty early morning here. There's a lot of dew on the ground. Moisture between the club and the ball will rob me of spin. So I'm going to try and play this shot, but I'm going to make sure my golf club is as clean as it can be first. But the conditions I've got aren't perfect. The green is great and the lie is great. It's that moisture that's really against me here. So let's go ahead. I've got the club face slightly open. And you can see how many golf balls I've got here because that's how many I think it's going to take me to hit the shot that I want, because it is a high risk shot. So I'm going to work the club up, work it across, narrow release, a little bit of speed at the bottom, and see if we can get one out there with a lower flight and a bit of spin. Popped up on me. So the initial launch angle there was a lot higher than I thought. And if I'm going to hit another one, I have to clean this wedge. I have to have clean golf clubs. So straight away, the launch angle there was higher than I anticipated. And the reason that it was higher than I anticipated is simply for the reasons that we've said. The launch angle when you play this shot will actually be really low, even though you've got 60 and the face is open. Because the club sticks to the ball, it drags the ball and we get a really low launch angle. On that particular shot, because of the moisture, the ball slides and pops up, so that came out much higher. It's not a terrible result, but it was higher than I wanted. But I'm blaming the conditions, certainly not blaming myself. Right, let's have another go. I probably hit that a little higher in the face than I wanted as well, a little bit too much of a divot. So let's go again. So we're working across, loads of release. That was better. That was better. So you see the difference in the flight, and from my perspective, that looked like it grabbed a little bit more. Notice on that one, no divot. That was a better strike. So notice I cleaned the golf club. The ball was as clean as it could be. I hit a little lower in the face, which means that there was less moisture and grass between the club and the ball, and it came out so much lower. And I'd be pretty happy with that. It's just gone a little bit left off that slope, but that was a much better shot. That ball is soaking wet, so I'm going to clean that one. But it takes practice. But, you know, golf is, you're playing golf because it's fun. Hitting these shots is fun. So go to the practice area, mess around with it, have a go. That's where you do your learning, where you're sort of out your comfort zone and hitting lots of different shots. Right, same again. Let's see if we can get that club working a little bit more across this time. Higher release, get that strike that I want. Terrible. Popped up on me, really popped up on me. I mean, that was a terrible result, but you can see the difference there in just that launch angle, because I've got variables that I actually can't control. That moisture, and that was again much higher strike in the face. So that was a terrible result there. Let's have one more go. Popped up a little bit again. Seemed to have a little bit of spin on it because it stopped pretty quick, but again just popped up a little bit. So that's how you play it. You know, as I say, I'm going to blame the conditions as why I couldn't hit that as well as I'd like. I got one that was pretty good. The strike was a bit lower in the face. But those are the three things that you need. That's four. Those are the three things that you need. But the environment, the conditions play a huge role. So get yourself a high quality wedge, get yourself a high quality ball, go and have fun with it. And if you master it, it's such an impressive shot. And all your playing partners will be asking you, how did you play that low spinning pitch? That's how you do it.